Morimens won the spot for the best strategy category in my top 6 gacha games of 2026. I currently have over 100 hours on the game, and I will share my knowledge of the game that's all packaged into one video today. From what to prioritize in the main campaign, to how the upgrade systems work, how to maximize the gacha to get the best characters, and what to expect in the long term in late game content. I will try to cover everything a beginner or intermediate needs to know when starting out and plan out for the long game. Before I get started, I would like to disclose that this video is sponsored by BIAV Studio, but they said I can present my ideas however I wish. Even though this is mostly an educational video, I will be sprinkling some critiques of the game here and there. If you're watching this during the anniversary celebration period, the game also has a collaboration event with none other than Song of Saya, which is a visual novel I've read and weirdly fits with the theme of Morimens. There's a bunch of free rewards waiting, more on this later on in the video though. Starting off with the basics of gameplay, I myself play a lot of Slay the Spire in my spare time, and Morimens takes a lot of inspiration from it. You can bring a party of 4 units into a level, and every turn you'll draw 5 random cards from your deck. You have 5 points of arithmetica to spend on said cards on this turn, and when you end it, all of your leftover cards are moved to the discard pile. The enemy will also project their next action, so if they're dealing damage, you will be able to see how much you will be taking. Certain abilities give shield points, and this will naturally negate damage, but all of your shield will be removed on the next turn, even if you don't end up using it. The same can also apply to the enemy. All these are basic rule sets from Slay the Spire, but this is where the game starts to diverge. You'll notice that you can't target enemies with cards. Instead, unless otherwise stated, your damage dealing cards will always strike the leftmost enemy first. Every character also has an ultimate skill on the top left side called the Exalt. They will need an energy currency called Alien Mist to fill it. This will naturally be gained by playing their cards or via certain abilities. On the bottom left, there's also your protagonist skill called the Posse. The energy needed to fill this is called Key Flare. You can select one from a predetermined list, but some of them will have to be unlocked later. If you want a brief hint, any Posse effect that gives you more arithmetica is good. There's one that you get pretty early in the game, and another one for clearing out one of the side event stories. At its absolute basics, this is the gameplay loop of Morimens, but there's obviously way more that goes on behind the scenes, which I will eventually get to. Now I'll go through how team building and how the realms work. Unlike most other gacha games, there's no elemental system in Morimens. Instead, every character belongs into one of 4 realms, and depending on your team composition, it enables a set of mechanics all with different playstyles. You can fit units up to 2 different realms into a team, but the game will physically prevent you from adding units from a 3rd realm. This means that since the realms change the mechanics of the game only, enemies cannot be weaker or stronger from damage taken from a particular realm. Here are the realms and some brief details regarding them. Chaos is kinda like the classic support realm that lets you store 2 activations of your Posse ability. In addition, you gain Key Flare faster, and you're allowed to activate your Posses 2 times in a single turn, where the second activation allows you to choose a Posse effect randomly selected from 3. Chaos teams let you synergize better with your protagonist skill, but has no other game-changing mechanics. Acre is the tentacle realm. If you have units belonging to this realm, then you'll see a gauge on the top of your characters during combat. Certain cards and abilities will gain you more tentacles in the gauge, and by default, damage will be dealt to the enemy depending on the amount of tentacles you have when a turn ends. While this may just seem like free passive damage, what gets crazier is that if you click on the tentacle gauge, you can select from 2 other modes. The Tranquil mode greatly reduces the damage your tentacles will deal on this turn, but gives you shield, so it serves as a defensive option. The Red mode amplifies the amount of damage your tentacles deal this turn, but you will lose one in the process. The Acre realm gives you flexibility and can be a great second realm to learn starting from Chaos. Caro is a bit more strategic and harder to learn for beginners. The main gimmick is this gauge that appears above your team. When filled, you get a card in your hand called an Embryo. When Caro characters use their Exalt, they will consume an Embryo card if you have one to gain a powered up effect. The Embryo cards can also be used independently to let you gain Alien Mist to a character. This means you'll have to time your Exalt abilities to the use of these Embryo cards to maximize its effect. There's also a red orb next to the gauge. When you click on it, you can also restore some of your lost health. The embryo gauge also fills faster when your health total is lower, so it becomes a high-risk, high-reward playstyle that dares you to lower your health total. Carol is a realm that you'll likely have to take some time to figure out, but the risk you take from timing everything right will feel rewarding. Lastly, the most complex of the realms, at least in my opinion, is Ultra. The first card you play in a turn will be copied into the Ultra space right above your team. When 5 cards are present, instead of ending your current turn, you'll instead get an extra turn where the cards in the Ultra space are returned to your hand. If you click on the Ultra space at any time, you can also delete the leftmost card in exchange for an Insight token card, which gives 1 Arithmetica and draws a card, but you can only do this once per turn. As you expect, this realm requires you to carefully think about your plays and which turn to activate the Ultra turn for maximum effects. Certain keywords on cards will activate bonuses if it's the first card played in a turn or played during the extra turn. When you put together a team, if you combine 2 realms together, then both their mechanics will be shared to some degree, just that a pure realm team will have their mechanics more pronounced. It's also important to note that there are 2 rule sets in the game, and all gameplay content will follow one of them. Fated Legacy is the classic rule set when the game first launched, and Astral Reign represents a new rule set that was introduced when Arc 2 of the main story released, and changes certain mechanics of the game quite drastically. Content will be marked by their respective banner to let you know which rule set it uses. If you click on the Astral Reign icon, the new rules are pretty long, but what boils it down is that it adjusts certain status effects so they're balanced more strictly, and certain relics and gear will function differently. In most campaign and late game modes, you'll embark on a roguelike run where you try to navigate to the final boss node, and you can come across shops to purchase relics or modify your deck. Event nodes where you can gain rewards, but maybe at the cost of pulling a harmful card into your deck, and teleport points where you can move to another location on the map. While it's technically not mandatory to fully explore the map, it is in your best interest to do that, since you can maximize the amount of resources you have to beat the final fight easier. While every level differs, I can give a few pointers on how to succeed. First, the shop nodes are one of the most powerful tools in the game, as there's 2 main things you can get from it. The first is the ability to remove a card from your deck. If you played any deck builders, thinning out your deck so you have a higher likelihood to draw your good cards is a very powerful strategy. For some reason, you even get coins from doing this, even though it would make more sense to spend gold for this effect instead. Overall, it's a very good feature to use, so delete those low-value strikes and defense every time you visit the shop. The second tip is that in the Fated Legacy rule set, most of the cursed relics are actually incredibly powerful. The cursed relics are ones with red text, and will give a seemingly negative effect. However, some of these negative effects are either extremely small or are not actually negative effects at all. In fact, these relics are so powerful that in the updated Astral Reign rule set, they have been reworked to do something else. You may also have noticed a white color card when you look at a character's menu. This is the Rouse card and is a permanent upgrade to that character when used once in combat. You can get the Rouse card by going to these event nodes within the level or buy it with coins at a shop. In the Astral Reign rule set, you have to spend Key Flare to get it instead during combat, but you are allowed to go into a Key Flare deficit if it's important that you do want to use the Rouse ability. Next is a general rule when in combat. I can't believe I'm saying this in the context of a gacha game, but it's okay to lose. To this day, Morimens has the hardest story campaign difficulty-wise among all the gacha games I've played so far. If you look at my original review, I actually died once in the Chapter 1 boss fight. For the most part, you'll notice a ramp up in difficulty after Chapter 6 or so in the main story. It may feel like enemies are constantly doing way too much damage to you, and I just want to say, get used to it. Unlike most other gacha games where you can steamroll opponents, in Morimens, at least in my experience, it always feels like you're fighting for your life, and understanding the boss mechanics will be key to victory. Next up, how do you make your Awakeners stronger? Well, I'm assuming that you've played a handful of gacha games before, but using daily stamina, you can farm for all sorts of materials to level up the Awakener or their cards. Something to know that the game doesn't tell you is that how drastic your constitution stat scales is dependent on your player level, so naturally as you play longer, you'll notice your team starting with more health. The Wheel of Destiny is the weapon gear slot that you can fit 2 of on each character. This is mostly obtained through the gacha, but something to note here is that the wheels don't need to be leveled. You can limit break it up to plus 12 via dupes, but once you get the wheel, you don't have to spend resources leveling it and stuff. By default, you're not allowed to fit 2 wheels of SSR rarity onto a single character. But there's a sneaky mechanic I do think is worth pointing out. If one of the SSR wheels happens to be max limit broken, meaning that you pulled 16 copies of it, then you are allowed to fit another SSR wheel onto a character. Most of the time, this is only something whales can do, but there are some strategies where you can eventually do this too. A common standard wheel that most players would recommend for beginners is this one. You can slowly work your way to a max limit break, as this one gives crit rate, which is a universally useful stat on most damage dealers. Another tip for wheels is that the R rarity wheels are actually pretty good in the Fated Legacy rule set. So good that their effects were severely nerfed in the newer rules. Namely, there's 2 of them that are quite useful to place on your team somewhere. And they're Frenzy, the artwork depicting an eye, and Emerge, depicting a volcano. One guarantees a cursed relic to appear in the shop, which as we've covered before, are extremely powerful. The other one gives more rerolls in the shop and makes them free. This gives you more chances to roll for good relics and increase your options. One of the more confusing avenues of upgrades you'll eventually unlock is the Covenants. This is essentially the RNG aspect of gearing, though the set can be equipped on anyone, so you likely won't need more than 1 set for each of them. I'll go through the basics of how it works and which stats to go for. You have to do some shopping when looking for Covenants, as some of them are farmed with stamina and others bought within the shop in exchange for resources. Unfortunately, a lot of the more useful sets aren't unlocked until the later portions of the main story, such as the last 2. As the best sets for damage dealers can differ, the most universally used sets will be the Support Covenants. The most used one, on average, is the Life Drain set, but you only unlock this after beating Chapter 7. The reason is that this set gives you Key Flare, which is extremely important in the Astral Rain rule set, which now encompasses most of the game. This is due to how the Rouse mechanic got reworked, since you now get a unit's Rouse card by consuming Key Flare. Some of the most used damage-dealing Covenants are Steppenwolf from the in-game shop, as well as April Tribute, but this requires the completion of the very last story chapter in Arc 1. For damage dealers, you will go for crit stats, damage amplification, and Key Flare regen. While any support Covenants generally want damage amp, Key Flare regen, Alien Mist regen, and possibly Black Sigil gain. Both death resistance and realm mastery are pretty niche stats, but this could be subject to change in the future. The important thing to keep in mind is that while crit stats only affect the unit that equipped it, damage amplification affects the entire party, so your supports can equip it too. When you get a high enough player level, you'll unlock Transcriptions, which is the actual RNG portion of the Covenants. Each of the 6 Covenant pieces can roll a selection of substats and a range of how good that stat is. You'll use a currency to reroll set stats, which can be obtained by melting down Covenants you're not using. My recommendation here is that you keep rerolling the 3 stats until you get a favorable one and it's at the highest possible range. Don't continue unless you have a max range roll. Once you lock that stat, you'll use this golden pen token to continue rolling. If you lock 2 stats, then the amount of pens per reroll will be tenfold. How you can do this is that as soon as you have 2 max range stat rolls, you have to be a bit picky with the third one. So as long as it's a stat you want and it has a somewhat decent range, just move on to the next piece. If you go into the Covenant selection screen, you'll see a percentage next to the set you saved. The percentage measures how many of your stat rolls are at the highest possible range. Realistically, you can accept anything above the 80% mark, as you would literally have to spend hundreds of golden pens to reach anywhere close to 90 to 100. Another tip is that if you want more gold pens, get it from the Premium Battle Pass or the dedicated monthly pack where you get 900 of it. Do not buy it in the in-game shop, as you don't get a lot of it and you can get better use out of the various currencies to buy other items. I'll now run through the shop and explain which items you should buy and which ones you should not. Starting off with the basic gold currency Rose script, While nothing in particular here is high priority, you can buy the Steppenwolf Covenant set, which is a generally good damage dealing set before you beat the first arc of the story. Sediments is the byproduct currency you get from pulling on the gacha, and it doesn't matter if it was a limited or standard banner. There is an item that you should buy every month with the highest priority over everything else, and that's this Petri dish token that lets you increase the dupe level of any character in the game, even the limiteds. It goes without saying, since you'll be naturally rolling a lot on the gacha, getting the shop currency won't be much of an issue, just that you may be tempted by the other items as well. If you do take away one thing from this section, it's that you always buy this before everything else. There's also an equivalent item for the wheels, where you can increase the dupe level of one. This is nice if you can afford it, but character dupes will generally have way bigger impacts. The free monthly pulls are also high priority, and the reason should be obvious. You can't farm for more gacha pulls, so take as much as you can get here. The badges are obtained from the first clear of the story chapters, or also obtained weekly from running the boss material dungeons. Just be careful that while you get a lot of it up front for beating story stages for the first time, you really don't get a good replenishable way to get more of this, so make your purchases count. The free pulls are obviously good buys, and this is how you can get the dupes for the 4-star characters. My personal pick would be Lotan, as when you get her to dupe level +7, her exalt can wipe out 15% of an enemy's health, which can become a team of its own. All of them can be useful with the exception of Doll, who lags behind the others in terms of viability. The Black Offering currency is obtained as one-time rewards from clearing the Realm Challenge stages, and from participating in the D-Effect late game mode. Just a heads up is that while I'm not too fluent on which wheels are good buys here, be prepared to only get a steady supply of the currency here until you're strong enough to tackle the late game stuff. Lastly, the D jewels can be obtained from just clearing the weekly missions. You used to get this from beating the Phantasmal Dive daily dungeon, but it's been changed. In addition to the gacha pulls, this is also where you get the dupe tokens for the welfare characters in the game. I don't have a lot of experience using them, but I personally recommend getting Aegis first, as she's used in some Carol teams to just stun an enemy outright for a turn, which is immensely useful right out of the box. Aurita can be good when you have a lot of dupes, but is weak without any, so you can slowly chip away at it until you can get her to max limit break. With all of the beginner progression stuff done, we can move on to everyone's favorite portion of a gacha game. Morimens' gacha system works in an interesting way. You can only roll 5 instances at a time, but there's a way to quicken the animation. Limited banners have a 1 in 3 rate-up chance, but it's possible to lose the coin flip twice before the next SSR is guaranteed to be the rate-up. As a beginner, you will get a lot of standard pulls. There are selectable rate-ups you can choose from. For the characters, you can choose to get the standard characters from one of 4 realms. Now, I don't like to give special treatment of a realm over others, since they all have a unique playstyle, but something to note is that as of right now, a handful of the standards will be outperformed by the limiteds. Namely, both Caro and Ultra have some very powerful units, but a chunk of their standard characters aren't performing too well. I'd advise you to look up online forums to see which realm you like the best, and how to build a starter team for it. But there's a beginner trap that can put you into an illusion of safety. Unfortunately, due to how the game scales its difficulty, you might not realize that a unit you've been using is weak when you begin, and you might end up investing into a team that doesn't scale well later into the campaign. My personal recommendation for the realm to roll for is Acre, mainly because it has the highest likelihood of pulling units that still shine in the late game, and Acre as a realm is just quite flexible for beginners to learn and master. When there's an anniversary event, there's a token that's generally given out that lets you reset the dupe levels of any unit, then exchange the dupe levels onto another standard character. Since you'll be getting a lot of Acre units, you can then use the dupe tokens from the lesser powerful ones for the more relevant units from the other realms. As for the wheel banner, once you have a team set up, as said before, your best bet here is to get this one from the Acre realm, and aim to max it out. This is considered to be the most universally used standard wheel, and one most players would recommend prioritizing. Now, one of my critiques about the game is that it can get dupe reliant at times. The dupe levels go up to +12, but with the inclusion of the first 3 dupe bonuses, this means that to max out a unit completely, you will have to pull 16 copies of them, While most of the units in the game don't have big power spikes, there are certain units that get major power boosts when you do get certain dupe effects. The most egregious one is the Overexalt, where you can store their Exalt meter to twice its usual amount, and the Overexalt gains another additional bonus. Overexalt unlocks when you have pulled a character 8 times, which is quite a tall order. Fortunately, there aren't many in the game that locks their power behind this threshold, and the standard characters will eventually get there when you play for long enough. This brings us to the star of this update. Morimens is collabing with the visual novel Saya no Uta, or just Song of Saya. I've actually read it, and it's grotesque, controversial in its theme, and weirdly appropriate for a game like Morimens. Saya is a support character that belongs to the Carol realm, and has the special gimmick of being able to copy another unit's cards into your deck. I'm not too big on the theory crafting aspect of the game, but she does have uses in certain teams. Saya's signature Wheel of Destiny, on the other hand, is insanely powerful. You can basically ignore the latter half of the effects, but the most meta effect is the first sentence, and it's that you unconditionally get 1 additional arithmetica every turn. There has not been an effect like this in the game before, and if you play the game to some degree, you know just how powerful having more action points to play your cards are. You don't even need to pull duplicates or anything, just having 1 copy of this wheel in your account will make you immensely stronger. Long story short, Saya as a unit might not be for everyone, but it is a very high priority to get her signature wheel, as the effect is unseen before in the game and undoubtedly will be universally helpful in all of your teams. Fortunately, as Saya is a collab character, the banner will be running for multiple months, lasting until this August, so you have plenty of time to decide if you want to pull. If you also log in during the collab period, you already get a free copy of Saya. Cumulatively, players will receive around 250 pulls during the anniversary period, but just be mindful that most of these pulls are special in the sense that they must be used during the event timeframe. Otherwise, they will expire and will be converted to standard pulls. I also want to talk about limited time events, but I won't be going over the late game mode. Generally, every event has a story segment, as well as event farming stages that you can clear to get the currency. The current event's story mode is open, though some of the levels may require a decently built team, as Morimens is known for its difficulty. But if you're really having trouble, don't forget that you can revive your team up to 5 times, and you can borrow a friend support. The same thing applies to the farming stages. These are actually pretty hard, as the efficiency for the event currency increases as you do the harder variants. You may have to watch out for the boss mechanics and team comps when tackling these. But again, remember that you unlock sweeping for the stage even after using revives or friend supports. Some event shops just have you buy the items directly, but this collab event has a lottery system where you have to feed it currency. Then it will randomly give you rewards from the pool. Since there's a limited amount of items, you'll eventually get all of them. Afterwards, you can reset the box and draw from another item pool. It goes without saying, the value of spending your stamina in events will generally outweigh spending it in normal farming stages. Events also usually give out a max limit broken wheel, so it's in your best interest to clear out these significant rewards here while the event is live. If for whatever reason you didn't participate in the event where you missed it, all past events are archived within the game, but you'll need this orb token to unlock them, which is obtained daily. It's also to your interest to eventually complete the past events, as they may also add a new posse effect to your arsenal. You can see the recommended read order for the story in the archive section. So that was my, presumably, comprehensive beginner guide for Morimens in 2026. It's a game that I've been playing regularly and one that I'd endorse as one of the standouts in mobile gaming. Let me know if the guide has helped you, and if you're interested in trying out Morimens, you can use the link in the description to download it. Once again, thank you to BIAV Studio for sponsoring this guide. For more content on gacha games, subscribe to the channel. As always, thank you for watching, be sure to spend moderately, and have fun out there.